receive your free copy, call 716-688-3882.
This is Reverend Mark Blue, the president of the local NAACP chapter of Buffalo. The primary election is September the 13th, and it's very important that we get out to vote, not only in the primary, but we must learn to vote in the general election. And the last day to register for the general election is October the 12th, 2018. So it has to be done by then in order for your vote to count. The NAACP theme for 2018 is Don't Hate, Vote. Our life depends on it. Our government depends on it. Our children's future depends on it. And we need to make sure that we get out and vote.
Serving Lockport and Dunkirk. We're Power 96.5 FM, 1080 AM. WUFO, Amherst, Buffalo.
For the next hour, you will be listening to Living Now with L.Nathan Hare. The phone lines are now open at 837-1112, and we encourage your questions and comments. Now, without further ado, here's your host, L.Nathan Hare.
All right, here we go. Living Now, living right now. This is L.Nathan Hare, your host here for this next hour at WFO Power 96.5 FM on your dial. Our principal sponsor, of course, is the Community Action Organization of Western New York, still fighting the war on poverty, now in our 53rd year. I want to welcome all of you again to this hour of insight, introspection, and interpretation of facts, events, and trends affecting you right here and right now in Buffalo and the Western New York community, and in fact, connecting to communities all across the country. Each week, we focus on things we think will be of interest to you, which will serve to motivate you and serve to connect you to the broader issues that affect our communities here in Western New York. Now, today's program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion, hope that you will. Our number here again is 837-1112. That's 837-1112. I'm going to try to get 2 points across today. The first is going to be the majority of what we're going to talk about, and the second one, depending on how our callers go, I might get thoroughly into the second one as well. The first point is that your education secretary, the Secretary of Education for the United States, is considering allowing schools to use federal funds to buy guns. Just park that for a second. I'll explain that in a minute. And also, I want to cover another issue, which is all that's free is not necessarily free. That's a cliffhanger, so just put a post stamp on that. We'll come back to that one. Let me come to this Betsy DeVos thing. Betsy DeVos considers allowing schools to use federal funds to buy guns. She wants to take money allocated to fund academic and support services for students who are underachieving and at risk of school failure, and use that money to buy guns to give to teachers, and then train the teachers on how to safely use those guns. The money was allocated through the Every Student Succeeds Act. The Every Student Succeeds Act was the legislation that replaced what was the No Child Left Behind Act that had been passed under the Bush administration back in 2001. The purpose of the Every Student Succeeds Act, for those that don't remember, is to ensure that every school in the United States is pursuing high academic standards for all school children, that schools and districts are held accountable for every student's achievement, and that resources are made available to assist districts and their schools in achieving these goals. Now, Title IV of the Act provides additional funds to school districts for academic support and academic enrichment programs aimed at helping underachieving school children. Our nation's president, Donald J. Trump, who said that he would appoint the smartest, most capable cabinet leaders ever seen in the United States to run the country's affairs. But instead, he appointed people like Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos is a person, as the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos is a person who was never taught in school. She has never administered a school. She has never worked in a school district's administration. She has never run a school district. And Donald Trump said, boy, with a resume like that, I think you'd make a great Secretary of Education. And that's what he did. He appointed her as the United States Secretary of Education. Now, this Betsy DeVos has built her vision of the, and I forgot, I didn't tell you that we're here with Emmanuel Radford, who's doing the live streaming of the program. Excuse me, if you have your computer or your handheld device, you can type in Facebook in your search field, and then type in Living Now, and the program will come up. You can see us talking on the air. If you have any questions, any concerns, or any observations that you want to make, you can type them in, and Emmanuel will get those to me, and then we'll respond to them as many as we can on the air. This Betsy DeVos, she has built her vision of the federal role in public school education around the idea of using federal money to help private, for-profit, and not-for-profit companies launch more and more charter schools. Her premise is that the best way to rescue children from failing public schools is to create many more private schools and give parents more choices about where to send their children to school. And of course, that sounds good, right? Until you look at what actually occurs. In the state of Michigan, her home state, Betsy DeVos became the leading, or at least the loudest, voice in the in the Michigan school reform movement. Nearly 80% of Detroit, Michigan students are now enrolled in private charter schools or private parochial schools. While massive amounts of federal money that used to go to public schools now goes to these private charter schools, education outcomes in the districts with in the districts that had high numbers of failing public schools have not improved at all, and in some cases, they've actually gotten worse. The private, for-profit, and not-for-profit charter schools actually are performing, in many cases, worse than the failing public schools they were supposed to be replacing. Now, I took a bit of this from an article written by Valerie Strauss, talking about a sobering look at what Betsy DeVos did to education in Michigan and what she is doing as the Secretary of Education. This appeared in the Washington Post in December of 2016. DeVos was the former Republican Party chairperson in Michigan and chair of the pro-school choice advocacy group called the American Federation for Children. And she has been what they refer to as a shining light to members of the movement to privatize public education by working to create programs and pass laws that require the use of public funds to pay for private school tuition in the form of vouchers and similar programs. She has been a force behind the spread of charter schools in Michigan, most of which have recorded student test scores in reading and math below the state average. And generally, the scores at these private and for-profit and not-for-profit charter schools are really no different than the scores for students who are attending Michigan's regular public schools. Instead of using federal funds and federal education expertise to help improve the nation's public schools, let's just think about that for a second. The Department of Education is a publicly funded Department of Education. It's funded with public funds called tax dollars. And we use public tax dollars to do things that we as the public collectively agree needs to be done. So, we agree that we should have clean water, right? So we have a clean water, process in this country, a Clean Water Act, a Clean Water Commission. We have people that go out and inspect the water and the water treatment facilities all around the country, because their job is to make sure that when you as the public said you wanted to have clean water to drink, you didn't want to get botulism or malaria out of your water, you wanted clean water, that we had to create an apparatus that would make it possible for us to assure ourselves that we had clean water, right? So machines had to be set up, people had to be set up, processes had to be set up to ensure that that would occur. That was paid for with public dollars. So you didn't get that money from General Motors. You got that money from regular tax dollars, right? You need to defend the borders of the United States, right? So who do you hire to defend the borders of the United States? You hire a private army, or do you hire the U.S. Armed Forces? Of course, you hire the U.S. Armed Forces because you're taking public money to do something that the public wants done. And so you create a public process to manage getting done what the public wants done. Well, the public says that citizens need to be educated, that we didn't want to have a dumb population, okay? A population of people that can't read, can't write, can't communicate, can't research, can't study on their own, can't challenge themselves. Oh, that's happening right now, isn't it? Oh, I'm sorry. But that's in the public interest to have an educated public. So we create a federal Department of Education, and the nation's laws say that it is the responsibility of the federal government to ensure that every single school-age child in the United States has an opportunity for a sound basic education. Now, it uses the word opportunity because you can take a horse to water and drown the horse if you want to, but you can't make the horse drink the water. So you can create educational systems that will give people the opportunity to be educated, but you can't force the person to think. The person still has to think. They still have to absorb the information. So there's always a piece of the education process that falls on you as the child and the parents of the child. But the process of getting our country where the vast majority of our people are educated is a public process. It's a public mandate. It's something that we as a public want done. So we create a public process to get that done. We create a Department of Education to manage public school education. But Betsy DeVos says that we should take those resources and use those to create private education models, for private schools, charter and for-profit and not-for-profit schools, and that we should give parents the choice of, if you don't like the school your child is going to, we'll create charter schools and your child can go to a charter school. But you know how this works itself out. We've talked about this on the air just a few months ago, that this charter school movement in this country has resulted in a much greater segregation in this country today than existed in 1954. We have public schools all over the country where almost all of the Caucasian students in those districts go to charter schools, go to parochial schools, or go to schools in districts where there are very few African people. And the public schools are dominated by African people who are low income and therefore have many more barriers to their success in education. And so we actually have allowed to be created the very opposite of what the policies of the country supposedly were trying to get done. Now we're talking about people responding to the fact that, you have this gun culture in this country. And so anytime somebody gets mad at the world, boy, the world's treating me bad. I know what I'll do. I'll get a machine gun, an AR-15 or something, and I'll go into school and I'll shoot a bunch of people, then I'll kill myself, right? And so to defend ourselves from that evolution in this country, something that didn't used to happen at all, but now happens much more frequently than we would have ever believed. Now, what Betsy DeVos and her Republican conservative, allies and Donald Trump want is, well, I know what we could do. Let's arm the teachers. Let's give the teachers guns, teach them how to use the guns. And we'll attach this to the stand your ground laws and the fear for your life, a court precedents. The courts have said if you fear for your life, especially if you're a police officer, if you fear for your life, you can shoot somebody in the head. It's okay. We got guys taking BB guns. They capture kids who they claim were shooting other people with BB guns. They put them in a car, put them in handcuffs, and then while the kids are in the car in the handcuffs and shackled, they shoot them in the head with a BB gun. And then there's a witness who says, yep, I was in it. I shot him in the head too, right? I beat these kids up too. I was with these cops when they did it. And the jury said, well, because we didn't like the kids, because the kids were doing horrible things in the community themselves, we think it was just for the police officers to be judge, jury, and executioners, of these kids. And so they acquitted these people of doing something that their own police officer, who was their partner in doing this, who was there with them, he confessed to doing it, and the people he did it with, they got off, they got acquitted, because the jury judged the victims as being bad people, as opposed to whether or not the police officers had done a bad thing, right? So now we're going to have that kind of mentality, this, stand your ground, type mentality. I stood my ground. This is my ground. You can't come and attack me in my house. And the fear for your life mentality. I shot him because, I was afraid, right? So we're going to take that and add to that giving teachers guns. So now we're going to have a situation where you're going to have teachers shooting students, saying that because the student was arguing with the teacher, was talking too much smack to the teacher going to say, well, I was standing my ground and I was afraid. What were you afraid of? Well, I know he's only 6 years old, but you didn't see the look on his face. I know that boy was going to try to get me, and that's why I shot him. That's what we're talking about, see? And then when it occurs, everybody's going to act as if they didn't realize that this could be the outcome. And then they'll come up with some waffly way to try to policy-wise manage something like that so that, it doesn't happen as frequently as it might otherwise occur. Who are the people that want guns and arms for teachers? It's the usual suspects. It's the same people that still fly Confederate flags. It's the same people who agree with kidnapping children of immigrant parents as punishment for their illegal entry into the country. It's the same people who like to walk around with loaded guns in their holsters while going to church or to the shopping mall. Are the same people who make up these are the same people that make up the majority of those pushing for arming the teachers, this arming the teachers movement. We have a caller. Hang on, let me grab that caller real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes, I was just calling because I'm really concerned and disturbed with that, because I agree 100% of everything you're saying about that issue with teachers having weapons. So I think maybe, where do we start with our congressmen? Should I be calling Chris Collins and every congressman from New York and the governor to saying, please, let's stop this. Let's do a petition or something.
See, and
that's
what has to happen
is, and then you have issues of lawsuits. You have all these other major issues going to come up with that. Okay, no teachers union in their right mind should ever be trying to even stand with that.
Well, luckily, the teachers' unions are not
should be trying to fight against that.
Right. The teachers' unions have been adamantly opposed to this idea of arming the teachers. They absolutely oppose that. And I agree with what you just said, that we should be calling Tom Cole. We should be calling Brian Higgins. We should be calling Chris Collins. We should be calling the legislators in our area, calling Kirsten Gillibrand and Charles Schumer. And we should be letting them know that we do not want this to occur. We do not want to turn our schools into armed camps where the teachers are walking around with holsters. And, I didn't mention this open carry thing, right? The teachers walking around with holsters and guns in the holsters and whatnot. I got to tell you, when I was a child, I had to be about 10, 11 years old, and Omar Jensen, who was the area director of the FBI, came to the school, and he was swagging around in the school with his gun out in his holster. And it was lucky for him that the school principal was close to me, because I was like 2 or 3 feet from getting my hands on this guy's gun, because I was young and I was crazy and whatnot, right? And that's what you're going to have go on. You're going to have a day is going to come when a teacher's got her gun in her purse, or she's got it in her desk, or a guy's got his gun in a holster, walking around the school. and somebody's going to make a move. You know, maybe 2 or 3 kids will make a move on somebody and get the gun, and then somebody's going to get shot, and everybody's going to be sitting around here acting like, oh, terrible, terrible, you know, and so on. It's too late to say terrible then. So
I agree. I agree with that because that's where my mindset was going with that.
Yep.
Okay, and I can't, and that I can't even imagine. You know, you put any teacher, from a young teacher to some older teacher, and people that are not used to our children anyway, they're half afraid of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
I don't know why. If you're going to be a teacher, you can't be in the teacher business afraid of children or people that don't look like you.
Absolutely.
Because you're delusional and you're in the wrong business.
Absolutely.
And we have much of that, much of that. And I'm talking about teachers that's 20 years in.
Yep.
Are still
got that mentality.
standing on that.
Yep.
So that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that's going about everything the very wrong way. That's going very far left.
Yep.
And all they're doing is open up another can of worms and a problem. And I will be on my phone today. If it takes me all week, I will call every representative that's in New York,
Yep.
from a legislator to my mayor to all the congressmen and senators, and let them know.
All right, we got a bunch of callers that want to.
That should not be happening.
We got a bunch of callers that want to talk on what you're talking about right now. So thank you so much, and let's do what you said, okay?
Oh, I sure am. Getting on it right now. Thank you.
God bless.
Bye.
All right, we've another caller. Hang on, we got that call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Hare.
Hi, Mother Dora. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I had a very nice week. Especially yesterday, Calvary Baptist Church honored about 8 of us, and they had a beautiful program at the church at 1184 Genesee Street. So I want to thank them for that recognition. But on your topic, excuse me, I too have a concern about this proposal for this Betty DeVos wanting to have or giving monies to schools so that teachers could carry guns, and I hope it never goes through. And I agree with your previous caller that all of these people who are in elected positions, they need to be called. Just wondering about Chris Collins, though, because you know he was arrested and indicted in New York, and he's in a whole lot of trouble. So the Republican Party is in the process of trying to find somebody to replace him, and they're going through all kinds of situations. So I don't know who will be. I don't know whether, because his name is still on the ballot. They're trying to figure out a way to get his name off the ballot.
What they want to try to do is to put him in as the in Hamburg as the city clerk for Hamburg.
Yeah,
and that way they could
the people don't want him out there.
Right.
Did you see the news, Mr. Hare?
Exactly.
They had a whole bunch of people in Hamburg. They had signs and everything. They said, we do not want him out here.
Why would they want
he
a
is
convicted?
Tainted. His reputation is tainted. His son and his future son-in-law and his parents, everybody else. He got everybody in trouble.
Yep.
So I'm not sure that of that situation, whether or not he'll still be on the ballot and who will replace him. That is the big question. But that's a good idea. And as far as the petition is concerned, that's another good idea. But, you know, somebody has to start it.
Yep.
Somebody has to get the petition going and advertise it, get on the radio, advertise it in our community newspapers, and go to all the events where people are gathered and gather these petitions. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Right. So
but,
we have folks that are good managing this social media stuff, and I'm going to see if I can get our folks to start putting something together that we can do on Facebook. Right.
I admire what retired legislator Betty Jean Grant is doing. She's getting petitions to sign people up to vote, and she's everywhere. She's using social media. She's at every event that's happening in the community, and she's been really getting people to sign and to vote and to register. So it just takes one person to start the process. But I want to end by just announcing that I'm doing a tribute to Aretha Franklin.
Right.
On September the 8th, you probably heard about it. There will be a lot more coming. It's September 8th at the Meriwether Library from 2 to 5 p.m., And some of the people who will be on the program, I have two dancers who are going to dance to some of her songs. Jerome and his wife Victoria, and I think you know them. They're going to dance. I have three gospel singers coming, including Carol Millhouse. These are some of our best gospel singers in the city, who, as you know, Aretha started.
After Doyle, can we take a break?
I have storytelling, I have poetry, and I have a lot of films on different aspects of her life, and it's free.
Yep.
So I hope people will come out, and we're going to have this is a celebration.
Yep.
We know we're sad that she's gone,
but
we want to celebrate this lady, this great queen of soul.
Yep.
And so we're just going to have a good time celebrating her life and her music. So thank you so much, Mr. Hare. I'll hang up and listen to the rest of your show.
You are most welcome. Thank you, Mother Doyle. All right. Listen, why don't we take our first break, and then we'll get back into our subject. You all stick with us. We will see the side of the break here at Living Right Now.
Do you want to increase your home's value? Do you want to lower your energy bills? Are you in need of affordable financing for your next home improvement project? The CAO Home Improvement Resource Program can help. Just come to their monthly HIRP orientation session every second Wednesday of the month at 564 Dodge Street, Building 400. HIRP staff will help identify the resources you need to get financed, and they'll even help you with completing your application. You won't know what you qualify for until you call them today at 881-6543. That's 881-6543. Learn about all the home improvement programs you may be eligible for and ask about the affordable financing program that can help turn your house into your dream home. Call 881-6543 for more info. It's the Home Improvement Resource Program, restoring value to neighborhoods across Erie County, one house at a time. Brought to you by the Community Action Organization of Erie County.
All right, welcome back to Living Now here at WFO 96.5 FM on your dial. This is L.Nathan Hare, your host, here with Emmanuel Radford, who's doing the live streaming of the program. If you want to watch the program or type in some of your concerns, your observations, or your questions, you can type in Living Now on your dial in Facebook, then type in Living Now. The program will come up, and you'll be able to make those questions or observations or comments known, and then Emmanuel will read them over the air, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Now, as I indicated before, the usual suspects that are the ones you would expect to be the ones pushing for this vigilante stuff is these same people you see flying Confederate flags, the people that agree with kidnapping children from immigrant parents, you know, like the people that work for the Immigration Customs Enforcement Service. I mean, come on now. You're telling me that all of a sudden Donald Trump becomes the president and everybody in the Immigration Customs and Enforcement Office are okay with you snatching people up at the border and taking their kids away from them, something that you had never done before. You taking something that used to be a status offense like a speeding ticket or disorderly conduct and treating this as if it's a misdemeanor, like it's a crime. And then because you got convicted of the crime of crossing the border as a misdemeanor, that automatically makes you ineligible for you to be able to come to the United States. That's just a trick, you know, that was done by Donald Trump to make it possible to put these people in jail and deport, you know, these people from the country. The same people who have done that, the same immigration people who were doing that are the same ones who were snatching these kids. And I mean, they talk about 2,500 kids, and really 5,000 kids that they snatched away. Some kids that came across the border by themselves, other people that came across the border with their parents, and they were snatched from their parents and deported whoever knows wherever in the country. A good 500 or 600 of these kids, they still can't figure out who the parents were or who the kids were and how to match up the parents and the kids, because 400 of their parents have been deported already and can't be matched up. So what are you going to do? You're just going to keep these kids? This country kidnapped almost 5,000 children and is still holding over 500 of those children in essentially a kidnapped situation. And that's okay? The United States is okay with that? I don't get that. Where's the outcry, you know, for something like that? So now we see that progressive people in the United States, supported mostly by the Democratic Party, the teachers' unions, education groups, and gun control activists, immediately criticized this idea of giving guns to teachers and then training the teachers on how to become the last line of defense, in excuse me, in schools. That was hard to even say, right? Most of what I suspect most of you would say is that we need less guns in and around schools, not more, and that the response to school closings or school shootings should be fewer guns, not more guns. The ideas being promoted by President Trump and his minions would actually make teachers less safe. If a gunman wanted to attack a school and assumed that the teachers were armed, the gunman would just attack the teachers first and then go on the rampage. Arming the teachers would not harden the schools, as Trump and his National Rifle Association, also known as the National Sell More Guns Association, might say. The major impetus for this new wrinkle begins in Texas and in the state of Oklahoma, where officials were trying to figure out if it would be legal to take funds from their state's student support and academic enrichment programs to buy guns and train teachers to use the guns. Apparently, since there's nothing in the law that appropriated money for student support and academic enrichment that specifically said you couldn't use the money to buy guns, they said, well, then it must be legal to be able to take the money to buy guns. Now, I just want you to just wrap your mind around this for just a second. There's nothing in the Title IV or Title VII or Title I or Title III of education law that, money is appropriated through those laws for sports, for academic enrichment, for after-school programs, for remedial education supports, and so on in schools. There's nothing in those laws that says that you can't buy guns. So that means that there's nothing in those laws that say that you can't buy nuclear weapons. Come on, Lee, work with me now. Okay. There's nothing in those laws that says you can't buy anthrax. Right? That you can't buy shoulder-fired missiles with the same money, right? Here's what the authors of the law providing the education support grants to help the authors of the law providing the education support grants to help children never envisioned the possibility that someone would take money away from the children to buy guns. That's why they never bothered to put words like that in the legislation, because there was nothing in the legislation that had anything to do with buying nuclear weapons and whatnot. Of course they didn't have any words in there for doing that. Who in the world would ever think that you would take money for school sports and use it to buy shoulder-fired, rocket launchers, right? I mean, who would think something like that? Betsy DeVos and Donald Trump are arguing that the fact that these laws allocating education funds were silent on the question of using the money to buy guns proves that the authors intended for local school districts to have the flexibility to use these funds. And I'm not making this up. This is in Valerie Strauss's article. I'm not making this up. This is not me saying this. Valerie Strauss in the Washington Post, December 8th, 2016. This is in the text of her article. I mean, I'm paraphrasing it, but this is in the text of her article. So instead of financing after-school academic and enrichment programs, financing in-school course remediation, financing homeroom parents, financing access to computers, tutors, and after-school transportation and things like that, Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos think that the funds should be used to buy Glocks and training on firearm safety. That's what they think the money should be used for. So now we're going to have kids who don't get after-school programs. They don't get remediation. They don't get tutoring. They don't get after-school sports, and that sort of stuff to keep these kids out of trouble. They don't get that. But the teachers get guns so that they can, muscle up with the students and, present themselves as supposedly the last line of defense, in the schools and so on, right? This is what's going on in this country. This is who you hire. Those 78 80,000 people in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan whose undervoting resulted in Donald Trump winning those states, if those people had bothered to vote, not just whined about how they didn't like Donald Trump, if they had bothered to vote, we wouldn't have Donald Trump as the president, and you wouldn't have people like this making policy like this. This is absolutely insane from my point of view. That's my opinion. You all get to make your own opinions, but this, from my opinion, this is absolutely insane. Historically, the Education Department has never before funded gun purchases, ever. In the history of having an education department in the United States, they have never used one single penny for the purpose of buying guns, not once. Earlier this year, in the wake of the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, Congress allocated $50 million per year for a school safety grant program, and the school safety grant program. This is a program, a $50 million program that Congress authorized to go to school districts around the country, called a school safety grant program. In the legislation itself, it specifically banned using the school safety grant program to train or provide staff with guns. The school safety grant by the Department of Education said you couldn't use the school safety grant to buy guns or train people on how to use guns. How in the world can you tell me that the Education Succeeds, the Every Student Succeeds Act funds could be used to buy guns? How in the world could you even twist your, excuse me, I don't want to act like I used to act when I was younger, so we're gonna calm it down. What is likely to occur is that Betsy DeVos and Donald Trump and the others won't publicly state that you can't use the federal education funds to buy guns. But what she would not move against is if a state chose to use its federal funds to buy guns, she wouldn't object to it. In other words, we would historically, up until this moment, thought that if you took education funds to buy guns, that would be a disallowed cost, and that at the minimum, you would not be able to take federal money to do that. You'd have to pay that money back to the federal government, and you'd have to pay for that stuff from someplace else. And at maximum, you might be brought up in civil charges could be brought up against you, for doing something like that. That's a violation of law, right? But Betsy DeVos wouldn't do that. She would say, well, since they didn't say you couldn't do it and you want to do it, go ahead and do it. That's Texas and Oklahoma, right? And so Trump and his Republican allies are trying to push the argument that the law does not explicitly prohibit the use to buy guns. And so DeVos and her department's administration can't disallow this type of expenditure. That's what Trump and DeVos are trying to push. The perverse nature of this Trump administration initiative, according to Senator Patty Murray of Washington State, is that using these funds to buy guns is not only the opposite of what Congress intended, it is wrong and will make schools more dangerous and students less safe. DeVos is also Trump's appointed leader of a school safety commission created by President Trump that is expected to include a section in its report on best practices for arming school personnel, according to several people familiar with this process. New York State's Education Commissioner Mary Elias reacted this way. She says, that is just beyond the pale to think that that's just something that's reasonable. It's atrocious and really, I think, ill-conceived. She said she was outraged that Betsy DeVos was eyeing a plan to allow states to use federal dollars to buy guns for teachers. The Education Department wants to use student support and academic enrichment grants, which have a loophole that would, or at least they claim it's a loophole, that would allow the purchase of weapons by states. Elia tells WBFO that new teachers should not have to worry about having a gun in, she was talking on WBFO News, that teachers should not have to worry about having a gun in their desk. While speaking to a district-wide graduation ceremony at McKinley High School this past week, she said we would think that it is all right. Why would we think it would be all right to expect teachers who have so many other things on their plate to do to support kids have to be thinking about a gun that's in the drawer? So we're going to take our last break, and then we'll get back into our subject. We're going to get into our everything is free ain't free. We'll get into that in just a second. So if you all stick with us, we'll see the side of the break here at Living Now, living right now.
Do you want to increase your home's value? Do you want to lower your energy bills? Are you in need of affordable financing for your next home improvement project? The CAO Home Improvement Resource Program can help. Just come to their monthly HIRP orientation session every second Wednesday of the month at 564 Dodge Street, Building 400. HIRP staff will help identify the resources you need to get financed, and they'll even help you with completing your application. You won't know what you qualify for until you call them today at 881-6543. That's 881-6543. Learn about all the home improvement programs you may be eligible for and ask about the affordable financing program that can help turn your house into your dream home. Call 881-6543 for more info. It's the Home Improvement Resource Program, restoring value to neighborhoods across Erie County, one house at a time. Brought to you by the Community Action Organization of Erie County.
All right, welcome back to Living Now here at WFO Power 96.5 FM on your dial. This is L.Nathan Hare, your host, here with Emmanuel Radford, who does the live streaming of the program. I want to get into a subject real quickly, see what you all's thoughts are about this. Basically, my framework is the idea that not all free is free. Now, just kind of work with me on this. Reportedly, nearly 70% of students who applied for New York State's free college program were rejected. Now, this is, I took this from an article on Market Watch on October 16th of this year. It says that there are certain aspects of the New York State Excelsior Scholarship Program that need to be understood as high school juniors and seniors start preparing for entry into a college program. So I just want people to just get your arms wrapped around this, right? Because on the baseline, the Excelsior program is a tuition scholarship for every single student who graduates from a high school that is accredited in New York State. If you graduate from a high school in New York State, you are automatically eligible for an Excelsior scholarship. Now, the Excelsior scholarship doesn't go to any university. It goes to state universities. So you get a automatic scholarship for your enrollment in any state universities. CUNY, State University of New York, SUNY, State University of New York, City University of New York was CUNY, any community college, that's under the state university system, you are automatically eligible for this scholarship. Now, being automatically eligible, you got to understand what that means. That means just tuition. It doesn't pay for your transportation. It doesn't pay for your books. Doesn't pay for your clothes. Doesn't pay for your food. So if you can't get into Buff State or get into University of Buffalo, and you have to go to Potsdam, or Putnam or St. Regis or somewhere, that's the only spot that you could get into in the university system, and you live in Buffalo, you got to get there, right? You got to eat while you're there. You got to wear clothes while you're there. You got to, buy books and computers and stuff like that while you're there. That's not covered by the Excelsior program, just tuition. And of course, you have to apply for your TAP and your Pell. So if the TAP and Pell are enough to pay for your tuition, you don't get any more than that, right? So you still, as parents, have to prepare to put some cash together to support your child while your child is going to school. It's cheaper if your child is able to go to school in Erie County, and you can commute back and forth between your home and school. That way you don't have to pay for room and board, for your child, but you still got to pay for books. Still got to pay for supplies, and that sort of stuff, in addition to the tuition. So to be eligible for this tuition scholarship program, your annual household income, one more wrinkle, cannot exceed $110,000 maximum. You must get accepted into and attend New York State's public universities and be pursuing a bachelor's degree. So you can't be going to a community college unless you're in a program called a 2+2 program, which means you do your first 2 years of your bachelor degree program, you do it at a community college, and then you do your junior and your senior year at a 4-year college. But it has to be in a structured program. You know what I mean? You can't just start out and say, I'm going to go into welding, and then 2 years later decide, I'm going to go into law. It doesn't work out like that, right? So all of that sounds great. When they talk about 110,000, a lot of us don't react. We say, well, I don't have $110,000 worth of income. However, if your income as the student counts as part of your household income, or actually it does, if working will push you over the household income limit, you may have to make some difficult choices. In other words, if you're working, your older sister's working, your younger brother's working, your mother's working, your father's working, and between y'all, you now have over $110,000, in your income. And remember, if you're under the age of 24, you're considered to be a part of your parents' household, even if you claim that you live on your own. You'd have to actually get a bursar's office to, get enough information to prove that you were a completely independent, emancipated student for you to be treated as if your eligibility is based on just your income. So generally, if you're under the age of 24, all of the income that comes into your household is considered to be your income for the purpose of financial aid. So it's not that hard for you to be in a household that has an income over $110,000. So if that's the case, you don't get this scholarship. So that's another one of the free parts. So that part's not free for you, right? You just apply for TAP and Pell. That's not free for you. Now, just over 20,000 students in the 2017-2018 year period received the Excelsior Scholarship last year, roughly 3.2% of the state's 633,000 undergraduate students, according to an analysis of New York State higher education data released last week by the Center for an Urban Future, which is a New York City-based think tank focused on economic equity. According to them, that seems to be pretty modest for a college promise program that basically says that every student can attend a public college or university for free, according to Tom Hilliard, a senior fellow for academic or economic opportunity at the Center for an Urban Future. That report included college students who would not have qualified for the scholarship, such as students who are only taking one credit, pursuing their degree, or non-New York State residents who try to get the Excelsior Scholarship. They're not New York State residents, but they try to apply for it because they're going to school in New York State. If you count them in the pool of the Excelsior beneficiaries, that made the share of students benefiting from the program look smaller than it actually was. In other words, that 3.2% was based on the total number of students attending State University of New York baccalaureate programs. So if you knocked out all those people that were ineligible to apply in the first place, right, that would make the participation rate higher than it looks. It wouldn't be so low as 3.22%. What might be a better measure of the program's utility is a relatively high number of students who applied for the scholarship and were rejected. This is interesting. Of the 63,599 students who applied for the program, 43,513 were denied, or about 68%, according to the Urban Studies report, the Urban Future report. While the policy considerations around which the Excelsior Scholarship Program was formed may be reasonably sound, it seems clear from the high percentages of applications that are being rejected that the state's apparatus has not communicated the requirements to get into the program and to preserve the benefits of the program as effectively as I think is needed. The high level of rejected applicants indicates that officials grossly understated it. There appears to be too many barriers, too many misunderstandings, too much lack of trust, and too many catches in the eligibility for this Excelsior program. Now, it must be stated at the outset that New York State provides tuition-free college for about 53% of all of its college-attending students anyway. That's because 53% of the students who attend college in New York State are eligible for Max, TAP, and Pell programs. So if there was no Excelsior program, 53% of the students would still get their college paid for free and get their books and room and board and so on covered, right? So that may be a large factor in the high percentage of Excelsior applications that get rejected because many of the eligible students already qualify for the tuition assistance program and other grant-based assistance. Likely as a result of the Excelsior program coming into existence, applicants to the City University of New York and the State University of New York increased by 11%, by 11% at CUNY and 9% at State University of New York this past year. So one of the effects of the Excelsior program that seems to be a positive effect is that it's caused many more students to seek enrollment at state university colleges or city university colleges. As to the barriers to Excelsior program entry that I had referred to earlier, these things included things like students need to be from families earning less than $110,000 a year. Many of the state's poorest college students have their tuition covered by a combination of Pell Grants, TAP, the money the federal, or Pell is the money the federal government provides to low-income students to pay for college, and TAP is a tuition assistance program we talked about a little bit earlier. Excelsior funding is only for tuition, so students with other sources of financial aid can't use the scholarship for living expenses, for books, or for other costs of college. It's pretty clear that affordability continues to be a problem for students, even when they receive need-based financial aid that covers their tuition. In addition to these provisions, graduates are required to live and work in New York for the number of years that they use the scholarship after they leave school. So if you were in your undergraduate program for 4 years and you got your undergraduate degree, you have to stay in New York and work for the next 4 years. If you don't, then the scholarship turns into a student loan program, and you have to pay all that cost that was paid for by the scholarship. You have to pay that money back. So, a lot of people are pursuing degrees in areas that they may not be able to get a job in New York State. So let's say you pursue a degree in marine science, studying the seas, and oceans and that sort of stuff. If you had a degree like that, if you didn't get a job working on the coastline of New York State, I mean, how many jobs are there going to be, in New York State for that particular degree area? You'd have to go where there are going to be more jobs, which is going to be along the Gulf of Mexico, along the states below New York State, along the West Coast. Those are going to be where those jobs are. Well, you would probably have to say, I can't pursue a degree in that area because I'm not going to be able to get the funding, the free tuition, or I got to accept the fact that I'm going to be carrying some significant student loan debt when I get done with college. Perhaps the most controversial requirement in the Excelsior program is that students need to take 30 credits per year to qualify for the scholarship. Now, in New York State, you're considered to be a full-time student if you're taking 12 credit hours a semester. That would be 24 credit hours per year. That makes you a full-time student in New York State. You're a full-time student for the purpose of your Pell Grant, right? But for the Excelsior program, you have to be taking 30 credits a semester. Now, you could figure out why that is. They don't want you taking 5 years to finish your education. They want you to get your education done in 4 years. So Most baccalaureate programs, it takes 120 credit hours to finish that bachelor degree program. So every 4 years, every year you take 30 credit hours. In 4 years, you're done. So the state is only exposed for tuition payments for you for 4 years, right? We got 2 minutes? Okay, just got 2 minutes. Or I got to wrap up right quick. Get 2 minutes, okay. So if you're in that situation for this Excelsior program, you don't get to take the lighter load, taking 4 courses, for 12 credit hours. You got to take 5 courses per semester for 15 credit hours per semester, 30 credit hours per year, or you lose your Excelsior grant. That requirement may be unrealistic if you're a community college student. Your reason why you're going to community college is because you have a hard time handling all of that load, right? That might be why you went to the community college. You may be a person who needs to work. So if you need to work, as I did when I was going to school, if you work an 8-hour schedule every day, you're going to school for 4 or 5 hours a day. You got to study for 3 hours a day. You're only sleeping like 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day, except on weekends, and it just makes you you become a crazy kind of person. In fact, 83% of the students rejected from Excelsior were denied because they had insufficient credits. That's why they got denied the program. I don't think that people are having this communicated to them well enough. So there's nothing wrong with this Excelsior program per se, but you have to know what you're getting into. And you got to really put that into your plan and know that you've got to do these things in order to keep the grant. Put another way, almost twice as many students were denied the Excelsior grant for lack of credits as actually received a scholarship. Yeah, that's interesting. So I talked about a little over 65,000 applied, but 43, almost 44,000 were rejected. So that's what you really got to understand with this Excelsior program. By incentivizing on-time graduation, the Excelsior program aims to lower overall student loan debt. So we'll talk about this stuff in the weeks ahead. We'll see you all next week here at Living Now. Living